Hi there. My name is David Merrill, and I'm a bankruptcy attorney in West Palm Beach with the firm of Ozment Merrill. We're a bankruptcy firm that handles Chapter 7s, 11s, 13s, and 12s, and we're involved with most aspects of bankruptcy law in general. In addition, I also handle cases that are called adversary proceedings, which is a lawsuit in the bankruptcy court, and have had this practice, even though we're based in West Palm Beach and have an office in West Palm Beach. This practice is one that I enjoy throughout the state of Florida, and in fact, throughout the southeastern United States. While my partner Drake Ozment handles matters that involve consumer cases such as Chapter 7s and 13s, my practice is focused primarily on Chapter 11s, where you'll see sometimes it's individuals with complex business matters, but very often what we're dealing with, and more often, are businesses. And our firm has handled matters that, in the construction industry, real estate, manufacturing, healthcare, mostly privately held companies, but also publicly traded companies as well. Let's talk about the three chapters that are much more common. That's Chapters 7, 11, and 13. Chapter 7 is liquidation. And in the context of liquidation, what we're talking about is a process that I'm going to explain briefly in a fashion that sounds very, very scary. And then I'm going to explain it in a slightly different fashion, just so that you understand how the various laws interact with one another. Now, Chapter 7, the theory is they take a snapshot of a day in your life. We're talking about all of your finances, all of your assets, which are the things that you own, and all of your liabilities, which are the things that you owe. You have to disclose all of these, and I need to be very, very clear about this. People love to say, oh, well, I owe my mom a couple of bucks. You got to put her in. You have to include her. There's no skipping around with this type of thing. It's an all or nothing type of situation. So all of your assets, all of your liabilities. Now the theory, and this sounds scary, is they take all the stuff you own and they sell it. And they use the proceeds from that sale to pay your creditors as best as they can be paid. Anybody who doesn't get paid gets discharged. That's generally how the theory works. Now discharge, that's a word people don't use every day. What it really talks about, people think of it that it means that your debts have been erased. That's not legally accurate because they're not going anywhere. But as far as you're concerned, your liability to have to pay those debts has been abrogated. So as a practical matter, if you think about it as being erased, that's not a bad way to consider it. Now, let's go back to that sale of all your assets that was so scary. The reality is that there are these things called exemptions. And exemptions are laws passed by the U.S. government and the Florida legislature that essentially say, look, there's a certain amount of stuff that you're allowed to keep so that you can go forward and be a productive member of society. Most people in Florida, and Texas for that matter, are familiar with their homestead exemption. Now, I need to be very careful about exemptions. You can't just move to Florida and get a 100% exemption. There's a lot of detail that goes into when you're eligible for Florida and when you're not, and when you're eligible for federal and when you're not. And that's something that we really need to sit down and talk about with you in a personal consultation. The bottom line, though, is there are about 18 different types of exemptions and subsets of those as well. The bottom line is that in many cases in consumer matters, those exemptions are sufficient to protect all of the assets that you own so that nothing ends up being sold. Because nothing is sold, everything gets discharged, and that's the great result. And that's your typical situation in a Chapter 7. As one aside, something that confuses a lot of people, businesses, even if they file a Chapter 7, are not entitled to a discharge in a Chapter 7 case. They're entitled to something called a permanent injunction, which is practically speaking very, very similar, but it's not quite the same thing. And that's something that you certainly need to be aware of as you're thinking about what's the appropriate chapter for you to decide to take. This is David Merrill again, and I wanted to take a moment to thank you for taking the time to look through and watch the different information that we have for you on Chapter 11s and other chapters in bankruptcy. Drake and I at Ozment Merrill are happy to talk to you about any of these matters, and in fact, we offer an initial consultation that is free and would invite you to call us at 561-689-6789 at your convenience. We'll be happy to meet with you and talk about whatever the specific situation that you're facing is. Have a great day.